Good to be here. So messaging is going to be around cybersecurity, but you're going to see some things in here, and I'm going to educate a little bit if you're not, focused on cybersecurity, but it's important to all. I'm going to show you some things inside of the way attackers will go through the life cycle of an attack. And what they're looking to do these days, which will be close to home for all of you on the call, is they want to build something called dwell time. And the longer they can dwell and sit inside that environment, like Ron referred to, without being detected, the more time they have to move what's called laterally across different systems, different environments. And what they're doing is they're staying there for a long time, typically weeks or months at a time, and they want to go out there to find what's worthwhile, go find those crown jewels. So in your case, if it's content, that you're looking to protect, they want to get in, and these bad actors, although pretty talented at getting in, they need time to go snoop around. If you think of your environment, how complex it is, and where you're storing all of your information, where you're storing all of the media, whatever it is that's important to your organization, they're not going to brute force break in and know exactly where to go. They're going to go scope it out and do some intelligence gathering. But at the end of the day, the prize for them is to find your data, find your media, whatever the content is that they want to eventually exfiltrate or encrypt. And you're going to see some things in this presentation, and a little bit of it self-serving, but most of it, which is where we focus, what we look for, which is looking for those hidden doors that are open to give them time to basically dwell, or what's called persistent. So I'm going to take you through a little bit about the way an attack goes, and then the way that we protect it. We can help out you or your cybersecurity teams. So let me go through and jump right into it. So a few things that I want you to take away from today's few minutes that we'll be spending together, and then follow up with Ron and connect us. And then our team will also reach out, as long as you're on that opt-in list, and see if you'd like to connect for more information. We're going to talk about this thing called persistence that Ron talked about, and basically what that is basically breaking through that front door and then sitting there with persistence or hidden back doors, what are called footholds. They want to sit there for that, that dwell time as long as they can, as I mentioned. And they're bypassing all the tools that are at that front door. If you think of it like a house, you're going to have a whole lot of tools, your team will, to block everybody at the front door and try to keep the locks on that door and keep it shut. At some point, those bad actors will figure out a way to get around those and then hide inside your environment and then dwell. And that's what we're hunting for, is to find those back doors and get them booted out as quickly as possible. We complement existing security solutions, and then we're simple and affordable and easy to trial. These persistence tactics are actually being used in over 90% of the attacks. John Hammond, one of our threat researchers, was actually just in the news again. He's got about 310,000 YouTube followers these days, pretty well known. Works for us just in the news because of the Log4j breach that Ron had mentioned before that. He was out there in front of some others like Kaseya, Print Nightmare, a whole bunch of others that have figured out ways to basically get in through that front door and stay there. John estimates over 90% of the attacks are using these things called persistence tactics, again, to survive reboots or restarts and then hide inside your environment and stay there undetected. The reason they do that, a little bit of knowledge on what's going on in the dark web, is they want to work hard one time, figure out your passwords, phishing emails. Don't click on those phishing emails. I'm sure your team has told you that. When they pop up, read it, look at it, scope it out. But 90% of the attacks are using some sort of phishing to get in, and then 90% of planting these persistence tactics. They don't want to work hard more than one time. So they're going to work hard one time, get through that front door, open up that hidden back door, and then come and go at will, have free reign. What they're doing is they are actually working inside of the operating system in every single endpoint. So inside of your device that you're using, regardless of what that is, they're going to actually hijack or replace some code in there to try to use your endpoint to open up that back door. And then, as I said, start to move laterally and across the network and look for what those crown jewels are to figure out where the impact is going to be. There is something called NIST. I'm not sure how many on the call are familiar with it, but it's out of the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's a government agency, nonprofit, of course, and they actually set up a framework of how to protect. The right way to protect is to build out as much as you can inside of these aspects of NIST. Again, if you're not specifically focused on cybersecurity but connected with technology and looking to protect, you want to ask your team, how well covered, how well protected are you, so that you can start to block and find those backdoors that have been opened up maliciously. NIST actually spells it out here. Identify what needs to be protected. In your case, would be any of your assets, your media, your content, all of that needs to be properly identified, so you know how to protect it. So you may want to ask those questions internally, what's been identified, to make sure what you've got is properly covered. How do you protect it and prevent that attack as best you can? They're playing defense at this point. And then if somebody does get in, how do you detect and find what's going on, and what do you do to respond to it and then recover? So if any of you have lived through, and hopefully not, an actual incident response or a breach in your company or previous companies, you would have seen some of this going on, where they need to figure out how is it that they got in, and then what happened and what was the impact. There are lots and lots of security solution providers out there that need to be sifted through. Typically what we see is companies are very heavy in that protect or prevent layer. If you take a look at this, and this will hit close to home, I think, with a lot of you on the call, there are companies that I've actually co-presented with before in Ron's sessions, like user training for KnowBe4, email filtering. You might see that where some of your emails might go through some sort of a filter to make sure there's nothing in there malicious. Of course, your technology teams would have firewalls out there to block, and then what they call antivirus and next-gen AVs that you would have in there to find things that are actually viruses in your environment. What's needed is detect and respond. You need people in the mix. You need security expertise. These cybersecurity individuals are super rare, not cheap, and tough to find. What we do is we actually put security expertise in the mix, and we're hunting in that space to detect and then to respond to a breach if it happens. What we're looking to do is, I'm going to use something called MITRE, and don't get fooled by the eye chart here. If you just look at the column headings from left to right, this is the anatomy of an attack. Just about every attack these days will come in with some form of initial access. They're going to try to get your passwords. Make sure you keep your passwords up to date. Make sure they're complex. When your IT department bothers you with having to change that password, don't complain. They're doing it for your own protection. And they want to make sure that that initial access is more and more difficult. But at some point, those bad actors will figure out how to get in. Again, it could be a phishing exploit, could be that click in the email that you shouldn't have clicked on, or somebody in the company, and before you know it, they basically have that open back door. So they're going to brute force in somehow through initial access. They're going to execute some sort of a payload or a command. And the purpose of that execution of that executable file is to actually open up that backdoor with what's called persistence. Here's where it will be relevant for you. If you look at persistence and breaking in and now sitting there again, having that dwell time, look what happens to the right. And what's really critical here for you would be discovery, finding out what's in your environment, maybe what is that content, what is that's going to hit home that they can hold you hostage for. Ron mentioned the Sony breach. There's been a whole host of others, right? But they don't just break in and know where to go. Think inside of very complex building, if you will. They don't break in and know exactly where to go. They put the flashlight on, they look around, and they're doing that in the technology front and doing discovery to see what's out there, what kind of content. Lateral movement basically is getting in, if you think of it, with entering at one point and then moving laterally throughout the network or the environment. So even if someone clicks on a single link in one email on their system, what that's done is it's allowed that bad actor to now move laterally and go from system to system and snoop around and figure out what they need. Collection of the data, so now they can hold it hostage, exfiltrate the data, and then impact with either encryption or hold it hostage for threatening to release it. So when now that is actually the new trend, is not so much to encrypt anymore, but is to grab the crown jewels and threaten to publish it, publicize it, and put it out there. So they'll hit you with, at that point, instead of a ransomware note, basically to threaten to release. So encryption, releasing the data, is what the threat is. So if you look at that anatomy of an attack, you can see where if the proper protection is done up front and blocking as much as possible with initial access and then blocking at that column called persistence, which again is where that back door is opened up. And we as a company focus on that. Our founders came out of the NSA, 10 years they were doing this against our foreign adversaries. Their job was to open up a back door. They had to stay there for months to years at a time. Our CEO, Kyle Hansloven, was actually a master of that, got really, really good at staying there. Never got busted, pretty highly decorated in the NSA, and was able to survive and stay again for months to years. When he left the NSA and our other two founders left, started Huntress 6 years back, recently secured a $40 million Series B round. We are making headlines with a lot of the stuff that we're doing, giving back overall to the cybersecurity community and threat hunting in that persistence. But anyway, they got really good at doing that. When they started Huntress 6 years back, we've got 1 million agents. They flipped it and said, hey, we can now protect and guard. So if we have businesses that are being hit, which is just about every attack these days, as John Hammond says, over 90%, we can now help to safeguard and add another layer of security into the existing security solution stack. And what we want to do is make it more and more difficult for that bad actor to move to the right of persistence. So if we stop them at persistence, we can help you to close that back door. We can then make it more difficult, virtually impossible to get to discovery and virtually impossible to execute a payload. So if we are in there hunting in your environment, which is what our human threat ops team does, we are human threat ops augmented by our software. Very different than most software-only solutions. We have people in the mix. Here's where our threat ops team has come from, some pretty notable names out there. I was 20 years over at Cisco. The threat ops team has got some pretty big names, including NSA out there, DoD, intelligence community. So we are out there helping to hunt down those persistence mechanisms, playing offense in your environment to hunt, and then provide what's called an assisted remediation, basically a step-by-step process to be able to remediate quickly. Over 1 million endpoints now. We just crossed that a couple weeks back. Need to update it. I'm not going to go down the technical path and show you the way that it works, but I will show you that your team or you would actually get a step-by-step report. We would tell you what it is that our team found. Pretty clear, pretty simple. We then go through what security tools are out there. Here's the key: is we give you remediation steps, and then we will then give a review remediation plan button, and then step-by-step to remediate it. So even if your company has cybersecurity folks, we can augment it. Our price point is anywhere from about $3 to $4 per agent per month, so about $40 to $50 at most per Windows machine per year. Your threat ops team could actually benefit from having Huntress in the mix. If you don't have folks that are laser focused on cybersecurity, put us in the mix, and we can help to do that and offensively threat hunt. We also do some other things with Microsoft on the phone. We actually are able to manage the free Microsoft Defender that's getting really great scores these days. So if the Defender will do the trick, the Huntress platform can actually manage it. Here's what our threat ops team is doing. The key is the reverse engineering, using all their training out of the NSA and now 6 years with Huntress. Incident reporting, and then we do a whole lot of security research and giving back. Ron mentioned the Log4j. We haven't updated this since like 3 days ago, but we were out there in front of what was called the Kaseya breach. It was like the SolarWinds that made the news, what they call a supply chain attack, pretty nasty stuff that gets in all over the place. The Log4j was one that was hitting pretty major, pretty significant. We were out in front of that. There's Kyle, our CEO, down there on CNBC. So we will give back to the cybersecurity community when we see there's something that we can help with, whether it's through our 1 million agents, through our connections. We will actually jump right in, and typically are all over the blogs with being out there first on the scene, and then very willing to openly share and give back to the community. Price point I mentioned before is in this range. Give you an idea based on the volume. So $3 to $4 per agent per month. Simple and affordable. There is a trial, which is the slide that I'll leave you with. If you or someone in the company wants to take a further look at Huntress, we can set up a call. We'll do a deeper dive. We'll go into the dashboard. The dashboard is really simple, super clean. This is the way it looks. We only tell you when there's an active incident, when you need to do something to offload an IT team. Trial is real easy and real quick to put up. So that's it, Ron.